it's time for Culture Talk. This is the segment where we talk about culturally relevant topics and how you can use these topics to start conversations about your faith. And I am joined today with co-author of Always Be Ready and speaker Kathy Ross. Thank you for joining us.
It's good to be here, Sandra.
You know, I find you as someone who's always very positive and very kind in your interactions with others. So I wanted to bring you here to talk about this topic because there's a difference, as you know, and you're great at balancing the difference between hope and toxic positivity. So first, let's unpack what that means. Like, what does it mean to have toxic positivity?
Positivity is hard for me to even say, because if you've taken the Strengths Finder test and one of your strengths is positivity, you never like to associate that characteristic with toxicity.
Right.
But as someone who's expressed it at times in toxic ways, I can really relate to this topic and the need to discuss it. But I've got a great Bible verse for you. Let me start out with Proverbs, I believe it is 25:20. Like vinegar poured on a wound is someone who sings songs to a heavy heart. And that's the problem with toxic positivity. It's when you take this cheerful, you overextend and overlay this cheerfulness on everything in every situation. You know, it's an abuse of human emotion, really.
Right.
And it is really insensitive. And it's coming from a place, I think people think, well, I'm supposed to cheer people up. I'm supposed to lift people up.
Right.
And you're doing the opposite when you come across that way. There's something in us. I think God made us this way, that we have a capacity for what's called emotional attunement. We connect with people when we get a sense of where they are emotionally and make sure we meet them there. And this desire to always be the positive, overarchingly optimistic person, you just inadvertently, you can wound people.
Right.
And you can deny their feelings instead of affirming their feelings, which for someone who's got positivity, you have an innate desire to affirm people.
Right.
And to see, you just can't help but you see the positive side of a bad situation. But to bring that to someone who's feeling the full range of human emotion, which God made and God expressed and experienced, it's hurtful. Right. And I'm sure you've experienced it. For example, I know you've been through some really profound hurts, like the loss of your sister. I can't imagine a deeper hurt. And people want to express something and they get tangled up and they don't know what to say. And they think their job is to change how you feel instead of to accept how you feel.
Right.
So they'll say something like, well, at least she's with the Lord now.
Right.
And she's in heaven, so she's happy. That's a true statement, but that does not meet you where your heart is in that moment of sharing.
Right. Well, and I love that we have the example that Jesus sets with Lazarus. Like with Lazarus, he's dead, he's gone.
Yes.
And Jesus knows what he's about to do, but he still sits there and he's sad and he's grieving and he's mourning.
Yes.
And in that space, and it's a very uncomfortable space, to be with someone as they're in pain. That's very uncomfortable. And you're right. We do want to share hope. And like your book, Always Be Ready. We always want to be ready to give answers. But sometimes those answers are just letting them be in that space of grief.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, the most important thing I think a person can do is like what my friend Mark Clark does. He'll say, how's your soul doing?
What a good question.
And I love that question because that tells me he doesn't want the superficial answer.
Right.
I'm fine. And we always, I'm fine. Things are great. But sometimes we need a chance to tell people where our soul is. And if it's joyful, Mark receives it. I'm so glad you're doing well. But he can tell, and I think we can tell in one another when we oh, I'm fine, and we don't mean it,
Right.
but to invite people, I think that's something we all need to learn to do, is to invite people to share where they really are emotionally.
Right.
And the first thing you can do is listen.
Mm-hmm.
And if you listen carefully, you may get a chance to say, is there any way that I can be of help?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really important question to ask, to show that you really care. And what we refrain from sometimes is like, I think we're afraid that we might be asked to give. We might be asked to give our time. We might be asked to give our attention. I don't know, but we have issues, I think, sometimes with we're maybe afraid of our own feelings and how we'll respond.
Right.
So anyway, I just hope that when people get together over the holidays, they can rejoice with those who are genuinely rejoicing, and they can mourn with those who are mourning by saying the right things and avoiding saying things like, cheer up, you're going to land on your feet. I'm sorry you lost your job, but there are more jobs. You'll be fine.
Yeah. So it sounds like some key takeaways is to just be willing to press in to the conversation, be willing to be in that space of uncomfortableness,
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And let's face it, the scripture gives lots of support for this idea that we do need to spend time lamenting. I know right now there's a lot of lament that's happening in our culture, whether it's from racial injustice that's there or poverty that people are experiencing who've lost jobs or lost loved ones. There's a lot of reason to be sad with people right now. And I love the fact that scripture gives us lots of guidance in lamenting. And I love too that Jesus says in the Psalms, actually, that the Lord is close to those who have a broken heart. And so he's there to provide comfort. So you don't need to be the one that makes everything better for somebody. Let him be the one.
Well, thank you so much for that, Kathy. Are there any resources that you would point people to?
Well, in scripture, for sure. The book of Lamentations, you got a whole book devoted to lament. The Psalms are full of David crying out his lament to God. And I have found those particularly helpful through this period of the pandemic. And there's a book that I've just found called Weep With Me by a pastor named Mark. He's somewhere in the Midwest, but he has learned a lot about the healing that comes when we weep with people. When we share in their sorrow, allow ourselves to grieve with them and understand how it affects people, how it heals.
Thank you so much for joining us, Kathy. If you want to hear more from Kathy Ross and Hugh Ross, check out their book, Always Be Ready. And you can find this at shop.reasons.org.